The farmers say that when Trump took office, he raised tariffs. Prices weren't great in the first half of this year. And now, with the new tariffs, we're not sure if it's worth farming or not. Everyone's struggling. The seafood industry has been hit hard. No one has work, and the fish farms are struggling. Hatcheries aren't doing well either. The fish fillet factories are saying that with the new tariffs, buying fish is a loss. If they keep buying at the lower prices, the farmers will also lose money.
The high tariffs the U.S. has placed on Chinese goods are really damaging certain industries, including the food that Americans eat. According to Reuters, the U.S. imposing a 170% punitive tariff on Chinese tilapia exports worth about $425 million, the door to one of the most important markets for tilapia is almost completely shut. What does this 170% tariff mean? For example, if a batch of tilapia fillets cost $100 offshore, when it enters the U.S. market, it will face an additional $170 in tariffs. This brings the total cost to at least $270, not even including shipping, insurance, and other expenses. Such high costs mean that Chinese tilapia completely loses its price competitiveness in the U.S. market, making it nearly impossible for importers to buy from China.
The U.S. raised tariffs a lot, so our tilapia exports are affected. Now the price of tilapia in the sheds is only about 70 cents US. Last year it was 80 cents. The price in the open ponds is just 60 cents, and the factory price is even lower, about 58 cents. Since exports are blocked, I don't think the price will improve. If we keep farming through the whole year, we might end up losing money, even lower than the cost.
The trade war between China and the U.S. started a few years ago, and the tariffs on both sides have kept increasing. News reports mention that the U.S. raised tariffs on most Chinese goods by 145%, and China retaliated with 125% tariffs on U.S. goods, which has seriously hindered normal trade between the two countries. The 170% tariff on tilapia is far above the usual levels, and almost seals the fate of Chinese tilapia exports to the U.S. Americans love tilapia. It's the fourth most popular seafood on their tables, just behind shrimp, salmon, and cod. However, many American consumers might not know that much of their tilapia comes from Maing, a city in southern China. Maing, known for its petrochemical industry, is also the largest tilapia production, farming, and export processing base in China and the world. The annual output accounts for 1/9 of China's total, and the city is known as the tilapia capital of China. Located in a subtropical region, Maing's warm climate and abundant water resources provide the ideal environment for tilapia farming. Over the years, Maing has developed a complete industry chain, from hatchery breeding, feed production, large-scale farming, to deep processing, cold chain logistics, and export trade. The tilapia farms in Maing cover an area about 1.5 times the size of San Francisco. The hatcheries and feed factories support these farms. Inside Maing, there are 16 factories that process tilapia into fillets for export, with most of it being sent to supermarkets in the U.S. According to local government data, Maing exports about 100,000 tons of tilapia every year, mostly to the U.S. and Canada. This amount is enough to meet the annual fish consumption of about 25 million Americans. The tilapia farming, processing, and export industry has supported tens of thousands of families in Maing. It not only provides a stable income for thousands of farmers, workers, and their families, but it also plays a crucial role in rural revitalization. The demand from the U.S. market has been a key driving force behind the thriving tilapia industry in Maing. However, this situation has started to deteriorate recently. In late April, Reuters visited a hatchery in Maing and reported that they had not received any new orders for fry. Feed manufacturers said their customers were cutting production, and processors were idle. Many farmers said they were losing money at the current prices. Tongwei Group, one of China's largest aquaculture companies, warned that this month, 1 in 10 tilapia farmers nationwide could lose their jobs. Huang Songfei, a longtime buyer from Maing, said, "These high tariffs have hit people hard. The entire industry chain is affected, and people are facing the risk of unemployment." As one of China's largest aquaculture companies, Tongwei Group's warning that 1 in 10 tilapia farmers could lose their jobs highlights the severity and widespread nature of the crisis. March to May is usually the peak season for tilapia stocking. Newly hatched fish are in high demand and quickly sold to farmers. This spring, however, orders have been scarce. A worker said this is the toughest year. She explained that normally by now, many fish would have already been sold, but now no one is buying. Farmers are scared. Her boss said sales have dropped by more than half. Some businesses haven't even exported to the U.S., and people are panicking. In early April, due to the escalating tariffs between China and the U.S., tilapia prices dropped by 17%. Mr. Huang said that although prices have slightly recovered, they are still at dangerously low levels, and some farmers are struggling to make ends meet. In addition to farmers, the city's 16 export processing companies are also struggling. Several procurement officers at processing factories said that more than 60% of their tilapia used to be sold to the U.S. However, if this situation continues, everyone will go bankrupt. This is not just an industry setback, it's a heavy blow to the region's economic backbone and the lives of tens of thousands of ordinary people. Maing's crisis is a microcosm about how the trade friction between China and the U.S. profoundly affect local economies and livelihoods. While Ming's tilapia industry crisis appears to be caused by the high U.S. tariffs, it is the result of multiple factors at play. One reason is structural issues, such as over-reliance on a single market. This is a fundamental structural flaw in Maing and China's tilapia industry. For a long time, driven by strong demand from the U.S. market, the entire industry has almost been created for America. From the selection of species and specification control in the farming process, processing products strictly according to U.S. market preferences, such as providing boneless and skinless fillets, specific sizes and packaging, complex certification systems like BAP, ASC, and the entry thresholds for major U.S. supermarkets. This way, the local economy was heavily reliant on a few large importers for marketing channels. Every step was meticulously optimized and designed around the U.S. market. This custom-made model brought huge success and rapid expansion in the early stages, but also created a strong dependency. Therefore, this highly specialized model, tailored to a single market, reduces the ability to adapt to changes. As a result, the entire industry's risk resilience is weak, and there's no room to maneuver. This dilemma is not unique. A U.S. executive order that took effect on April 2nd added a 34% reciprocal tariff to Chinese products, on top of the 20 and 30 to 40% tariffs imposed in February. This action specifically raised the import cost of Chinese goods. It's worth noting that this nearly covers the entire industry, specifically impacting major agricultural products exported from China to the U.S., including basic seafood like shrimp, fish, crabs, and shellfish, as well as specialty edible fungi like shiitake and enoki mushrooms, popular nuts and dried fruits, and culturally significant products like tea and Chinese herbs, such as ginseng and astragalus, along with the common culinary spices and even processed vegetables and fruit. All these categories have been caught up in the tariff storm, facing a sharp rise in costs. In response, some have suggested increasing tilapia sales within China. However, experts are cautious about this suggestion. Currently, the domestic market in China is also showing signs of weakness. According to 2020 data from the Chinese Communist Party's central bank, 70% of urban households' total assets are tied up in real estate, which is difficult to turn into large-scale consumer spending power. Chinese affairs analyst Wang He said that over the past 20 years, the Communist Party's housing reforms have drained wealth from ordinary citizens through real estate. People have bought homes by draining their family savings across multiple generations, parents, in-laws, and even grandparents, all contributing to the cost of one house, leaving everyone in debt. Wang He said that the wealth of ordinary Chinese people has already been depleted, which makes consumption almost impossible. Therefore, it's not that Chinese products can only be sold abroad and not domestically. The problem is that domestic consumers simply can't afford them. Despite the government's repeated calls for increased consumption in this year's work report, the current income distribution, wealth structure, and debt levels mean that Chinese people do not have the ability to consume the products they produce. In other words, even if tilapia supply in the domestic market increases, and prices drop due to the export blockage, it is unlikely to stimulate strong enough domestic demand in the short term to effectively absorb the excess production initially meant for the U.S. market. Moreover, the domestic seafood and protein markets in China are already highly competitive. Tilapia has to compete with various freshwater fish and other sources of protein on consumers' tables. In times of economic downturn, consumers may be more inclined to buy familiar, lower-priced sources of protein. At the same time, although the Chinese market also consumes tilapia, there are significant differences in consumer habits compared to the U.S. market. While American consumers prefer standardized, easy-to-cook fillets, domestic consumers in China are more accustomed to buying whole fish or have different cooking and flavor preferences. Additionally, tilapia faces intense competition from other rich and diverse freshwater fish and seafood products in the domestic market. Therefore, although the industry and government may be trying to promote domestic sales of tilapia, it is incredibly challenging due to the overall weak economic environment, sluggish consumer demand, and the product's lack of compatibility with the domestic market. In short, finding alternative markets is not easy. The article points out that while the EU, Africa, and the Middle East are potential markets, their demand volume and product requirements differ significantly from the U.S. market. This means the industry needs to make substantial adjustments, including revamping production lines, rebuilding marketing channels, and adapting to different market regulations and standards, all of which require time and significant investment. Even then, it's unlikely that the losses from losing the U.S. market can be quickly filled or fully compensated. Facing the current situation, some experts suggest that it might be essential to look deeper into the issue. Trump's extreme pressure on the Chinese government was not aimed at the Chinese people. Chinese affairs expert Wang He stated, "The main goal of the two U.S.-China tariff wars is not to destroy China's economy, but to use extreme pressure to cause division within the Chinese Communist Party and enable Chinese people, with the help of external forces, to more easily abandon the CCP and promote a peaceful transformation of Chinese society." Trump's tariff war directly targets the CCP. Current affairs commentator Yang Wei also believes that the U.S. tariff war is aimed at the CCP. He stated, "The tariff war launched by Trump is one of the ways to decouple from the CCP. The CCP's rapid retaliation, leading to skyrocketing reciprocal tariffs, has caused U.S.-China trade activities to come to a halt. Decoupling is happening now." President Trump repeatedly stated that the U.S. cannot continue to send money to the CCP, allowing them to develop military threats against the U.S. It's worth noting that former U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo previously called for differentiating between the CCP and the Chinese people. In his 2020 speech at the Nixon Library, which was called the New Iron Curtain speech, he said, "We must also engage and empower the Chinese people, a dynamic, freedom-loving people who are completely distinct from the Chinese Communist Party." On the other hand, experts believe that the fundamental issue with China's economy is institutional. Currently, China's economy is stuck in a long-term deflationary cycle. Corporate profits are continuously falling, consumer spending is weak, and domestic demand is severely lacking. The U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods have reached 245%, heavily damaging foreign trade exports. The real estate sector remains in decline, and local debts are severely burdening the local economy. Additionally, China faces issues such as private companies closing down, foreign enterprises withdrawing, a significant reduction in investments, a declining birth rate, mass unemployment, and government fiscal losses. Many economists believe that in economic development, confidence is more important than gold. However, under CCP rule, the law is treated like a joke. The rule of law is hollowed out, and businesses do not have legal protection. With personal wealth unprotected, how can businesses and individuals have confidence in the future? Although the CCP has proposed economic system reforms, these are desperate measures. Professor Xu Chenggang, a specialist in Chinese economics and institutions at Stanford University, stated that the fundamental issue facing China's economic development is the political system. He explained that the reason for China's reform and opening up over 40 years ago is the same as the reason for the reversal in the past decade. It was to save the CCP's authoritarian rule. Wang He emphasized that the CCP operates a predatory economic system. He said, "Its development goal is not to make the people wealthy or improve their lives, but to exploit the people and make the nation rich while keeping the people weak. A normal country would focus on making the people wealthy and strong, like the United States, where wealth is distributed across every household. But the CCP's economic, political, and social systems control resources in the hands of the state, which is the largest manipulator and monopolist." Wang He further pointed out that all of China is like a sweatshop. Chinese people produce massive amounts of goods but cannot consume them themselves. This is a great irony and tragedy for China. Yet, the CCP's media continues to brainwash the people, distorting the reality of the situation. It shifts the blame for the U.S.'s actions against the CCP, turning it into an attack on China as a whole.